Hello everyone, and welcome back. Ty the Tasmanian Tiger is the story of Ty the Tasmanian Tiger on his quest to save his home, the land down under, or as I personally like to call it,
the land above all others.
To do this, he'd usually utilize his trusty boomerangs, but have you seen how dangerous those things are? I wouldn't want to be around a human, let alone an extinct marsupial wielding one of those, so this time I think it's best if we leave the boomerangs at home. Can you beat Ty the Tasmanian Tiger without using boomerangs? The rules for this run are pretty simple. We can't chuck our rangs. While there are other actions Ty can perform that do kinda utilize the boomerangs, like climbing or swimming, this is more just to add a bit of flair to the animation, and as such, I won't be counting this as actually using the rangs. If we do need to use a boomerang at some point, which, let's be real, I'm almost certainly will, this will become a minimalist challenge. I'll also mention that I'm not going to be trying for a high completion total or anything, but I'll still be trying to get my hands on as many thunder eggs as I can. I was going to collect all of the golden cogs I could as well, but seeing as these just award us new rangs that aren't even needed for progression in a normal run, I decided that I wouldn't go out of my way for these. For this run, I'm going to be playing on the HD Steam port for more convenient recording. I've mentioned before my less than stellar PC, so if you notice any frame drops or stutters or whatever, it's not the game, it's my computer. I'm super excited for this run, since this game, and in fact the entire series, has always been quite close to my heart, despite only really playing the third one and bits of the other two as a kid. Not only did it come from the same country as me, but even my home city. I even had family who worked on it. Yeah, you know how cool the kid who had an uncle at Nintendo was in your school? Just imagine how popular I was having a cousin at Chrome. The answer? Not very. Despite my excitement, I don't really know what I'm in for, as I don't actually remember much of the specifics of this game. Maybe the boomerang is an integral part of the gameplay, maybe it's just vestigial. I guess we won't know until we get into it, so let's do just that. Can you beat Ty the Tasmanian Tiger without using boomerangs? Opening up, we get a scene of Ty playing around in the bush with some of his mates before accidentally falling through the ground and discovering an ancient mural painted on the wall. Just then, a strange apparition appears in front of him and warns Ty about a great danger threatening the world. A long time ago, the villainous boss cast sought to use the power of 5 mystic talismans to demote mammals as the dominant species and return the position to the ancestors of the late great dinosaurs.
Sticking for it!
Fortunately, he was stopped as a group of Tasmanian tigers, including Ty's parents, scattered the talismans before he could get his feathers on them, but in the process they were all sucked through a portal to a new dimension known as the Dreaming. Now Boss Cass is back, and as the last Tasmanian Tiger, it's Ty's job to find the talismans first and put a stop to his scheming once and for all. We now get dropped off in the game's hub world, Rainbow Cliffs, and we can get a feel for the controls. It's pretty standard stuff: move with WASD, jump with space, interact with R, and click the mouse to attack. The left click will launch out a boomerang, which obviously is a no-go, but using the right click, Ty will instead do a bite attack, giving us a way to deal with enemies. It isn't as good as the rangs are though. A lot of the time I found enemies would dodge away and I'd have to bite several times to get it to land, meaning in group fights taking hits is almost an inevitability, but to compensate for that a little, if you land an attack and another enemy is close enough, by spam clicking you can chain bites together, which will automatically land. You can also do this weird ground pound move, which I think is required to defeat some enemies, but in standard combat using it just guarantees taking a hit, so try to avoid it where possible. Before we can get a move on, Ty's pseudo-parental figure Maury the Cockatoo appears to give us some advice. He clearly hasn't been paying attention to the rules of the run though, since he tells us that we're going to need a second boomerang before we can really get stuck into our journey. He tells us he knows exactly where we should be able to find one and asks us to meet him over in the nearby Blah Blah station. Heading over there we can find Julius, the koala inventor, who's managed to make a machine that can not only locate the talismans for us, but actually even collect them. The only problem being that it requires these rare geo-looking things called thunder eggs to power it. To help us find these, Julius has created portals leading to various thunder egg hotspots around the world. We only have one of these available to us now, leading to 2 up, and wouldn't you know it, that just so happens to be where Maury knows of a second rang for us, so it's a no-brainer to head on in. This acts as the game's tutorial level, and when I say tutorial level, I mean it in the derogatory sense. While running through the level, Maury constantly pops up to offer little tidbits of advice, most of which you'll already have figured out just by playing the game, or that you'd be able to figure out just by continuing to play. It gets really annoying really quick. He is at least charming to listen to, being this nice, older, bogany guy, kind of reminding me a bit of Daryl from the castle.
How's the serenity?
Anyway, every level of the game features a similar structure. We have 8 thunder eggs to collect, 3 being standard across every level and the rest being awarded for completing unique challenges. On top of that, each level has a main mission, which will always correspond to the 4th thunder egg on the collection screen. And for 2 up, our main mission is to get to the top of Frillneck Peak to score ourselves a new boomerang. I'm gonna just go through the level and talk about the thunder eggs as we find them. The first one, Rock Jump, couldn't be easier, as it's just sitting atop a platform in the opening area. This jump did take me an embarrassing number of attempts to get, since I'm not used to playing a platformer on PC, but still, no real drama at all. The next one is just as easy. Not long into the level, you'll come across a bunch of these hovering eggs with cameras inside called spy eggs, and by spamming the bite button repeatedly when you see these, Ty will chain together a bunch of bites to travel along the length of them. This is one of the game's weirder mechanics. I have a lot of questions as to how this works exactly and as to the very nature of what these spy eggs are, but I digress. At the top of this chain of them is another thunder egg ripe for the taking. Upon making your way all the way to the top of Frillneck Peak, Ty will triumphantly pull his newly acquired rang from the stone. Maurice flaps down to congratulate us and also apologise, as the thunder egg he had planned to give us was stolen by some of Boss Cass's minions, the Frills, and so he tells us that we're going to need to put our new rang to use to get it back. Despite Maurice's insistence that we test out our new armaments, Frills are just as vulnerable to bites as they are to boomerangs. Like I mentioned, using the bite for combat can be a little bit finicky, especially in big hordes like this, and I did have to do a tactical retreat to refill my health, but even still, it wasn't too hard to send these lizards packing to score thunder egg number 3. While having 2 rangs doesn't really affect the combat all that much, it does have another use, as a parachute. Yeah, for whatever reason, Ty is able to hold his boomerangs out behind him while in the air to slow his fall, letting him travel a greater distance and avoid any fall damage. Now, I might not be a physics student, but even I know something ain't right here. I was thinking of disallowing this move, since in the context of the game, Ty is using the rangs to do this somehow, but I decided that since I was allowing him to use them as a climbing implement and later on for swimming, I would allow this too. This move is needed to get across a small gap right at the end of the level where we can score another thunder egg. That's it for unique thunder eggs in the level, but there are still the ones that are standardized across every level that I mentioned earlier. Firstly, we have the opal egg. Every level of the game is covered in opals, which is super unrealistic. As I mentioned, I live in Australia and there's just not a ton of precious gems hovering around the place. I only find like 2 or 3 max on my daily commute. If you can collect 300 of these and take them to the big machine at the end of the level, you get a thunder egg, similar to the 100 coin star in Mario 64, except way more frustrating. In Mario 64, there are ample coins to do this with, meaning if you miss a couple, you can catch up later, but in Ty, there are exactly 300 opals in every level. In the more linear levels, this isn't too bad, since you can just use the mushroom ring at the end of the level to teleport back to the start and do another run through to collect the ones you missed. But in the open area levels, if you miss a few, good luck trying to find where the hell they are. Similar to that, but less frustrating, is the 5 Bilby's thunder egg. Around every level, there are 5 of Ty's Bilby friends that have been trapped by Boss Cass, and upon freeing the last one, you'll get an egg. In the larger levels again, finding all these guys can be a little bit annoying, but not nearly as much as the opals, since the last opal could be literally anywhere in the level, whereas the Bilbies tend to only be hidden around points of interest. Finally, it's the time trial. This can take a few forms, be it a straight up time trial or a race against another character, but either way, complete it quickly enough to be granted a thunder egg. Uniquely, the time trial is locked behind completing the main mission for the level, meaning if we're ever unable to beat that mission, we're actually locked out of 2 thunder eggs, not just 1. There's another area in this level that requires us to use the glide move to get to, which houses the last of the opals and the final Bilby we need, so both of those thunder eggs are nabbable. There's also one final unique thunder egg challenge in this area, but it requires us to move these floating platforms around by hitting buttons on the wall with our boomerangs, which makes it unreachable. Still though, not a bad haul. 7 out of 8 is pretty good, I'd say. With both our hands now full of rangs, the gates back in Bly Bly Station open up, giving us access to the area's other levels. We can do these in any order we want, but first up, let's tackle Walk in the Park. This level is set in the rainforest, and due to all that rain, things have gotten a bit slippery, causing these big water slides to appear. You can speed down these as quickly as you want, but you'll probably want to take them as slow as possible to score all the opals lining them. The second one also has a split in the path, with the right side just being a shorter path to the same area, meaning you'll have to make at least 2 trips down here to get all 300 opals for the thunder egg at the end. Between the 2 water slides, we can find Ty's good buddy, Ranger Ken. He's here because the bats living in the local cave haven't migrated yet, and if they don't move along soon, the cave's going to start flooding, so Ken asks us if we can give them the push they need. This one is unfortunately a non-starter, since in order to convince the bats to move, we need to chuck a rang at them. I tried doing a bite at them, but either that's programmed not to work, or I just couldn't get close enough for the attack to register. Out the other side of the cave, we can find a jumping puzzle with a thunder egg as our reward at the top. Heading down the second water slide, there's another thunder egg just laying out in the open, but before Ty can pick it up, this jerk bush turkey comes along and eats it. Don't know what a bush turkey is? Yeah. It's pretty easy to chase this thing down, but catching it can be a little bit more difficult. Just bite ahead of it so that it'll run into your attack rather than away from you, and you should be able to score it without too much hassle. In the same area as the turkey chase, we can find this hollow tree with a bunch of mushroom jump pads in it, and at the very top is another easy to score egg. After climbing up the nearby mountain, dodging past the rolling boulders, we can find Ty's girlfriend Shazza. Her car's broken down, and she's having trouble fixing it, as she's being harassed by a bunch of Boss Cass's blue-tongue minions, so she asks us if we could help keep them off her back while she sorts things out. Now, usually this would be pretty easy, since the blue tongues are just as vulnerable to bites as Boss Cass's other minions, but for this mission we're forced into Ty's first person view, and while in this state all we're able to do is look around and chuck rangs to defend Shazza, leaving us helplessly watching as enemies slowly march towards her. This is especially annoying since this is the level's main mission, and as I mentioned earlier, without completing the main mission we don't get access to the level's time trial, meaning we're locked out of 2 Thunder Eggs because of this. To make up for this, all the bilbies in the level are accessible, meaning we can exit with just over half of the Thunder Eggs collected. Straight across from the portal to walk in the park, we can find our next level, Shipwrex, and this is the first really problematic level of the game. After collecting everything in the opening area and heading down to the beach, we're introduced to Ty's good buddy, Rex the Platypus. He tells us that his Misso Ella went for a swim around Danger Spike, but hasn't returned yet. He can't leave since he's on lifeguard duty, and so he asks us if we could go check up on her, and to help us do this, he even teaches us how to swim. By pressing the bite button while floating in the water or while doing a ground pound towards deep enough water, Ty will be able to dive. Our actions while underwater are pretty limited. We can speed around by holding the jump button, but we can't bite or even throw out rangs. To help with this, Rex gives us his aqua rangs, which are boomerangs that just work underwater, and tells us to use them to open the gate to the wider level. Here's the first problem, since the aqua rangs are still definitely boomerangs, and as such, we're not allowed to use them to open this gate. I was stuck here for quite a while, trying to look for a way to skip over the gate or phase through it, and was starting to think that the run might just end right here, but the solution is actually really easy. Just exit the level and enter back in. For whatever reason, the game just assumes we must have opened the gate at some point, and so lets us through no problem. This is where the second issue presents itself, in that this is the game's first open level. I touched on this a little in my rant about the 300 Opal Thunder Egg, but even outside of that, these levels are just kind of a pain. It's not even that they're too big, and more so that they're just wasteful with the space that they have. They have so many empty areas cluttering the layout, making it hard to navigate around and find all of the collectibles. I just don't get why Chrome would do this. Like, if you're not going to fill the areas with something of worth, why spend the time actually making them? And this level isn't even the worst offender in the game. Oh no, we'll get to that one, don't you worry. At least it's a pretty beautiful level. The lush beachy vibe is just kind of relaxing to be in. If I wasn't trying to collect things and just wanted to vibe out in an area, this would definitely be the level to do it in. Pretty close to the gate we can find Aurora, a seahorse whose kids have gone missing, and so tasks us with rounding them all back up. This is pretty easily done, since none of them are that hard to find at all, and all we need to do to collect them is swim through them. Also, as long as you're fast enough, the frills guarding them won't be any problem to slip by. Once you've rounded them all back up, return to Aurora, and as thanks for our help, we're awarded our first Thunder Egg of the level. Nearby, you can find a bunch of underwater tunnels, and if you follow them through for long enough, you'll eventually arrive in a secluded area with a sunken ship in the middle, housing another egg. Unfortunately, this one is out of our reach. What we're meant to do is hit this button on the inside of the ship with a rang through this hole in the side, causing a hatch to open, giving us access, which obviously we can't do. This one is particularly frustrating, since it's pretty obvious Ty should just be able to fit through this hole in the side of the ship to skip the door altogether, but alas, complaining about leaps in logic isn't going to make this one any more collectible. Thankfully, the next egg is not only collectible, but is done super easily. In the same area as the shipwreck, we can climb up a little mountain, and at the top of it, sitting in a bird's nest, is the Thunder Egg in question, right for the snatching. Nearby, we can find this area that's completely covered in mud. While walking through this stuff, Ty will constantly be sinking, and in order to not drown in it, you'll have to spam buttons wildly. You also can't jump out of the mud, meaning at the end, we can't get enough height to get onto the platform leading to another Thunder Egg. To reach said platform, we'd have to stay out of the mud leading up to it by dropping these coconuts off the trees and using them as platforms. And just like the bats in Walk in the Park, either they don't register bites or my bites just couldn't reach, so unfortunately, this one is out of the question. This is where our third and biggest problem rears its head. After collecting everything around the level, your path will eventually be blocked by another gate, just like the one at the start of the level, which again we're unable to open without the use of our rangs. This is a real problem, since without being able to access the final area, we can't complete the main mission, also locking us out of the time trial. The area behind this gate also houses the last bilby and the last of the opals, meaning that's 4 Thunder Eggs total this locks us out of, and we're still a couple short to be able to progress to the next set of levels. I tried exiting the level and re-entering since that worked for the last gate, but no luck. I tried utilizing a swim and air glitch, but again, no use. I was really scratching my head here, and honestly getting ready to call it and say that no, it's not possible to beat this game rangless. But then, I stumbled across something huge. While looking around online for anything that might help out, I found out about an extremely easy to pull off out of bounds glitch. In the area with the sunken ship, you can find this weird textured piece of wall, and just by walking into the wall nearby, you'll pass through, exiting the intended bounds of the level. I have no idea how this slipped past Chrome in playtesting. It's so easy to pull off, I'm sure someone must have done it by accident. It was a video by YouTuber Chronicies that tipped me up to this, so thanks to that. At the face of it, this isn't very useful, since once out of bounds, the only way to get back in bounds is back through the same crease in the wall that we entered through, but I have another idea. If we navigate around the world until we're behind the area locked off by the gate, you can see that there's a slight gap letting us travel under the level rather than around it. There's actually a few areas like this, another good one being near where the gate itself is, but this is the first one you'll come across. Controlling Ty gets a little bit tricky once under the sand here, but as long as you button mash in the general direction direction you want to go, you can get around. Once at the water's edge, Ty is unable to move any further since the ground curves down under the water, but by continuing to spam buttons, Ty will eventually dive further down, letting us swim underneath the water. Sorry that my description of exactly what's going on here is a little bit vague, but I was literally just spamming buttons at this point, so I really don't know what the science behind what's happening is. After swimming around a bit more, Ty will eventually emerge inside of Danger Spike. You'll want to now swim around to where the checkpoint is, since even while we're out of bounds, if we get close enough, it'll still activate. Now, with our checkpoint reset, if we die, we should theoretically appear back in the locked off area, but the question is, how do we die? Once inside of Danger Spike, we can't really swim back out, and we can't even dive down to drown ourselves. Or so I thought. With even more button mashing, again, sorry I don't really have an exact guide on what my inputs are, I was able to find a pocket where I could dive back under the water, and from here it's just a matter of waiting out Ty's lung capacity to respawn back in bounds behind the gate. I felt so proud of myself for figuring this out. It took me ages and I was about to give up at several points, but I'm glad I stuck with it. From here, collecting the last bilby and opals is a cakewalk. At the top of Danger Spike, we can find Ella, who, as it turns out, wasn't in any danger at all and has actually been enjoying a bit of peace and quiet. She decides that it's probably time she heads back home, and as thanks for all the effort that we put in to come see her, she gifts us a thunder egg. We can now exit the area just fine, since the game assumes since we're behind the gate, we must have already opened it to get here, and so opens it up for us. Now all we have to do is race Rex to the top of Danger Spike for a time trial egg, and we can finally be done with Shipwrex. With all of the levels we have access to completed, we have enough thunder eggs for Julius to retrieve the first talisman. When Ty goes to grab it though, he accidentally falls through a previously unseen portal, leading us to our first boss stage, Bullpen. I was super worried about this stage, since I was almost certain that I'd need to use my boomerangs to damage the boss, but as it turns out, we don't really damage the boss at all. Instead, we have to lure the boss, this big pig dude, into charging into these stone pillars around the arena. It can be kind of hard to get him to hit the pillars while also getting out in time without taking a hit yourself, but still, since this fight doesn't require any rangs to use, I don't really have much to say about it. Once back in Rainbow Cliffs, we appear in Julius's workshop. He informs us that the talisman machine is overflowing with excess energy, enough that he can use it to make a new special rang, the Flamerang. This is our first of the elemental rangs. We get one of these rangs after every boss we defeat, and unlike most of the boomerangs in the game that just exist to be kind of fun to play around with, these ones are actually intended for progression, and a lot of Thunder Egg challenges from here on out are based around the abilities that they provide. In fact, the first intended use for the Flamerang is right here in the hub world, as the next set of levels are locked behind a big ice wall, which the Flamerang can melt. I tried my best to get around this wall or glitch through it, but no matter what I tried, I couldn't get through it. I tried to find a similar out of bounds glitch like in Shipwrex to maybe get around it, but nothing like that seems to exist in the hub world. There is a pretty massive skip that I could use to avoid not just this wall, but every remaining level altogether, which I did try, but for reasons I'll get more into later, this skip isn't viable for this run just yet. As far as I can tell, we have no choice here but to use the Flamerang for its intended purpose, meaning, unfortunately, no, it's not possible to beat Ty the Tasmanian Tiger without using boomerangs. Still though, there's always the question of how many rangs does it take. After I destroyed the ice gate, we see a shadowy figure watching Ty from the distance, who disappears before Ty can get a good look at him. I'm sure there's nothing to be concerned about there, especially when we have 3 more levels brimming with Thunder Eggs to get into. First up is Snow Worries, which IMO sounds more like a Crash Bandicoot level than a Ty one. Remember earlier on when I said that there was a level that was worse than Shipwrex for having too much open space? Well, that was Snow Worries. Exploring this level is a nightmare, since there are just so many little nooks and crannies, oftentimes with nothing worth to find in them. So many times I'd be looking for a specific area and have no idea where to go, just because there were so many pointless areas on the map cluttering things up. On top of that, being a snow level, we have to deal with ice physics. It's not the worst ice in any game I've ever played. I think Crash 2 still takes that trophy in my books, but still, it makes getting around an already confusing level just that little bit more annoying. This is by far my least favorite level in the entire game, and it doesn't help that it's also almost a complete wash for Thunder Eggs. This is the first time that both the 300 opal egg and the bilby egg are completely unobtainable, thanks to the last opals being behind this gate in the underwater segment, which we need to use the aquarang to open, and the last bilby being behind this ice wall we need the flamerang to melt. I thought I could maybe climb or jump over this stack of ice blocks to get this bilby, but no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't get enough height. The main mission for this level is also incompletable. We have to get this Thunder Egg off the roof of the nearby mill, and to get up there we need to travel up these long slides to reach a button that will activate a platform. Activate all 3 and you can reach the top of the mill, but since these buttons require our boomerangs to activate, this is a non-starter, and with it, the time trial is also unfortunately out of the question. Right at the start of the level, this koala Sheila tells us that her kids were out playing, but haven't come back yet, and so asks us to go round them all up for her. Some of them can be collected since they're just hanging out in the open, but most of them are stuck under these massive piles of snow. Now, look, Tasmanian tigers are extinct, so I can't prove this, but I'm sure if one was presented with this situation, it could just dig the kid out and be done with it, but that's too much work for Ty. He needs his flamerang to do all the work for him here. Sorry kid, guess you're just stuck forever. Enjoy freezing to death, I guess. There are 2 thunder eggs awarded for throwing boomerangs at these spikes around the area. One in the water to drop them down and capture this yabby, and the other where we have to hit these spikes in a specific order to play a little tune, and as you might have guessed, without our rangs, we have no way to activate any of these spikes. All that said means that only 1 thunder egg is actually collectible in this level, the one that's just sitting out in the open at the end. A pretty bad showing all things considered. Hopefully the next level can make up for it a bit. Next up we have Outback Safari, which is one of the more unique levels in the game, as it entirely takes place while riding that big pig boss who apparently had a change of heart after we wiped the floor with him. This would be a nice little change of pace, but for whatever reason, my computer was having a ton of trouble with this level. Like, it was unplayably bad. I actually thought this was going to end the whole run, since even if I could get through it, none of the footage that I got would really be that usable. In the end, I decided to drop some cash on a new stick of RAM for my ancient PC, which did seem to help make things run better, so don't worry, you'll only have to deal with this crappy footage for a little. Thankfully, this level is much more completable than Snow Worries. For starters, all the opals and bilbies are collectible, and even pretty easy to find, since this time the level isn't unnecessarily big, thank god. Unfortunately, the main mission is once again undoable, and with it, so is the time trial. A bunch of emus are on the loose, and Shazza asks us to round them all up for her. To do this, we have to chuck our new lasserang at them, which is just a boomerang tied to a string, meaning it's a no-go. Guess that makes 2 times Australia lost to emus. Shazza actually has another mission in this level, which we can find at the start of the level. Maurice informs us that a group of frills are stalking Shazza on her daily rounds, and so it's up to us to stop them before they can reach her. To do this, we just need to ram into the frills as they appear. They're pretty easy to take out as long as you're paying attention, and even if one does catch up to Shazza, she can take a few hits before she gets taken out, so this one is pretty easy to finish for another thunder egg. In this big cave-like area, there's another thunder egg just kinda hanging out underneath one of the waterfalls. It blends in a little, but other than that, it's no problem to score this one. This level is also the return of Ranger Ken. The first mission sees him asking us to destroy one of Boss Cass's machines that's polluting the local watering hole. Just like Shazza's mission in Walk in the Park, this sets us into first-person mode, with no real options outside of chucking our rangs, so this one is out of the question. His next mission though is doable. Some of the local houses have caught fire and Ken needs us to put them all out. To do this, we just need to bash into the water towers near the burning houses, no rangs required. That's it for Outback Safari, and altogether, it's not a bad haul, though still, I'm not sure if it's going to be enough to save our dreadful collection from Snow Worries. I guess it all comes down to Bridge on the River Ty. This is another one of my favourite levels, just kind of being nice and peaceful if you ignore all the lizards trying to murder you. It also features these bin chickens running around, which is a plus for me since this is my favourite bird.
Such a majestic and beautiful creature.
Unfortunately, while I enjoy being in this level, its completability is pretty minuscule. Our main goal here is to help Dennis, this green tree frog, get to his house. Problem is, he's scared of the dark, and so needs us to light his way using our flamerang. This one is extra annoying, since uniquely, this level has the main mission be a prerequisite for 2 other thunder eggs. Of course, the time trial is out of the question, but also, if we were to get Dennis home, he would then give us another mission to turn the heat onto his place. As you might have guessed, that mission also requires the flamerang, so even if we could get to it, it would still be incompletable, but still, having one mission lock us out of almost half the level's thunder eggs is a bad start. Those aren't the only missions that we can't complete as well though. Next, this level features a mini-boss in the form of this big bully, Neddy. If you're Australian, you probably know immediately what this guy's referencing, but for my foreign viewers, he's based off a famous Australian outlaw named Ned Kelly, who, if you're a Borderlands fan, was also the basis of Red Belly from the pre-sequel. Attacking him straight on is pointless, thanks to his armor, so we have to jump over him when he charges us to attack from behind. I see no reason why our bites shouldn't work here, but for whatever reason, biting his weak spot deals no damage, so no thunder egg for us here. The 5 bilby egg is also unobtainable, and for a particularly frustrating reason this time. Around the opening area, we can find these spider webs blocking off some little nooks and crannies, and the only way to get through them is by burning them down with the flamerang. There's a bilby behind one of these webs, which at first I thought we couldn't get to, but turns out there's an area a little later on in the level where we can fall down to land behind the web to free this guy. You will be trapped in this area afterwards and need to reload the level, but that's not the end of the world since all your progress will be saved. The actual problem bilby is this one here. Despite it kind of just sitting out in the open, this little bit of web floating above the cage acts as an everything proof shield, making this bilby impossible to free. I tried everything. This bilby should 100% be collectible. I mean, the web sometimes even phases through the bilby in its animation, leaving no visible barrier to stop us from breaking its cage, but nope, no dice. On a positive note, the 300 opal thunder egg is collectible, if not a little annoying, thanks to this area where we need to repeatedly drop off this bridge to collect all the opals floating in the air. In the same area with the bridge, we can glide over to this little area with a pair of bush turkeys who, just like in Walk in the Park, have devoured another thunder egg. This time, damaging one of them will just have the thunder egg ate by the other one, so you'll need to damage them in quick succession to score the egg. Since we have to get in close to bite them, this is a little harder than if we had our rangs, but by getting both the turkeys right next to each other, it can be done. Finally, we can go meet with Rex, who offers to teach Ty how to dive. I mean, I kind of already knew how to do that, but sure, whatever makes you feel useful. After proving we know how to dive, Rex challenges us to prove our mastery by doing a dive off a massive tower. If we go through all the rings on the way down, which is really easy, like I think you'd have to try to screw this up, Rex will give us a thunder egg. That's all for this level, and yeah, 3 out of 8 thunder eggs isn't gonna cut it. Back in Rainbow Cliffs, if we look at Julius's machine, we can see that we're still 8 thunder eggs short, and with no rangless eggs remaining, it's time to figure out what thunder eggs are gonna take the least boomerang uses to collect. We can't go back to the first set of levels either, since the thunder eggs from these levels are actually different, being blue rather than red, and for whatever reason, this time only blue thunder eggs are good enough for Julius's machine, so we're limited to these 3 levels. Well, for a start, back in Bridge on the River Ty, we can use the Flamerang to get rid of that piece of web, stopping us from freeing the Bilby for a 1-to-1 boomerang to thunder egg ratio. We can also score the main egg from Snow Warriors with 1 boomerang use, thanks to a glitch. Usually, we need to travel up all 3 of these slides to press all 3 of these buttons to activate all 3 of these platforms leading to the top of the mill, but by just pressing the button closest to the mill, we can travel up the associated slide and carefully jump across the fence to get onto the roof without pressing any of the other buttons. I tried doing this without pressing any buttons whatsoever, but while we can get onto the fence without the gate the button activates being open, we can't bridge the gap from the fence to the roof of the mill. Also, thanks once again to Chronicky, since it was another one of their vids that tipped me off that this was possible. With this thunder egg collected, we also get access to the level's time trial, meaning for 1 rang we actually get 2 thunder eggs. The 300 opal mission is also doable for just 1 rang, since the only ones that we can't reach are behind that underwater gate, so opening that, we can collect the last of them. There's also these opals in one of the areas with the button for the mill, which you can get to, but you'll be trapped in doing so you'll have to exit and re-enter the level. Snow Warriors just keeps on giving though, since by melting one of these ice cubes, making up the wall blocking access to the last Bilby, we can jump over the remaining ones to free them, scoring ourselves a thunder egg in the process. That's it for what I'd call cheap thunder eggs, and we're still 3 short to be able to move on. All of the remaining eggs available to us require a good handful of rule breakages. I do think that I figured out which ones of these require the least boomerangs, but there's still a decent chance that there's a more efficient way to do this. Still in Snow Warriors, we can finally help those koala kids that got trapped in the snow. You can tell which piles of snow have koalas in them by seeing which ones have these kangaroos around them. There are 8 kids total, but 2 of them can be found on these pillars, meaning this thunder egg adds 6 more ranks to our total. Next up, we can head to Outback Safari, where it's finally time that I restored Australia's pride and claim vengeance on those damn emus. Catching these emus is a pain in the arse. It's basically just luck as to whether our last rang will register a hit on them or not. With 8 emus, technically it is possible to do this with 8 more rang uses, which I totally did and didn't miss like 100 times. Once caught, you have to reel it in without the rope breaking. To make this easier, you can try and catch the emu while it's close to Ty, but again, it's just kind of luck if the lasso will actually register or not, so you kind of just gotta take what you can get. While there are some thunder eggs that would technically be cheaper than this one, since this is another main mission, it gives us access to the level's time trial, meaning both of these thunder eggs only cost us 4 rang uses each. With that done, we've managed to scrape up enough thunder eggs to power Julius's machine for a second time, scoring us our second talisman. Not having learned his lesson from the last time though, Ty jumps to get it, and ends up crashing into another boss portal. After how simple the last boss was rangless, I was hopeful for this one, but unfortunately, no such luck this time. This time, we're fighting against this mechanical shark, and in order to damage it, we need to swim to the bottom of the ocean and hit one of these gas canisters to dislodge it. Once it floats to the surface, the shark will bite it, and we can use the Flamerang to blow up the gas canister and deal some damage. This means that every hit on the boss takes 2 boomerangs, and since we have to damage it 3 times to defeat it, it takes a total of 6 rule violations to beat. With another set of levels completed, Julius has another rang for us, this time being the Frosty rang, and just like the last set of levels, to get to the next ones, we're expected to test out this new rang. This time though, I do have a workaround, and not just a workaround to skip past the wall of flames, but actually to skip past every remaining level in the 3rd set. This is that skip that I was talking about earlier. See, on the other side of the water in Rainbow Cliffs, you can find this big gate, behind which is the portal to the final level, Cass's Crest. Problem is, it's locked, and usually we need to finish the next 3 levels to get the 3rd elemental rang, the Zappy rang, to power a generator to open it. But there's a glitch that lets us skip over all of that nonsense. Head over to this area and place Ty facing the wall so he's just barely standing in the water. Then jump and do a bite towards the wall. If you aim too far to the left, Ty will just end up biting, and too far to the right and he'll end up diving into the water. But if you do it just right, Ty will end up diving into the ground, causing him to swim in the air just above the ground. This can be pretty tricky to pull off, especially when you first try out, but eventually you will start to get the hang of it and be able to perform this glitch pretty consistently. This isn't a very robust swim in air glitch glitch though. Swim too high and the game will realize what's going on, so you really want to stay as low as you can. But if we can't swim up high, how is this meant to get us over the gate? Well, by swimming over to this tree just to the left of the gate, we can use this as kind of a ladder, letting us swim up without the game cluing into what's happening. It's pretty easy to stay on the tree, but do be careful, as if you fall, the glitch will be cancelled. You do need to be somewhat quick though, as while we are technically in the open air, the game still thinks Ty is underwater, meaning his lung capacity is at play. Once around this spot on the tree, you'll want to start slowly inching forward towards the gate, just until Ty exits the swimming animation and starts standing upright. From here, you only have a very brief window till the game realizes what's going on, so you need to quickly jump as far forward towards the gate as you can, and if all goes well, you should manage to get on top of it, from where you can drop down to get access to the levels behind. This final jump did take me several tries as well, forcing me to restart the whole process over and over and over again, but just keep trying and eventually you'll nail it. Now, you might be wondering why it is that I couldn't just use this glitch earlier to skip the ice skate and all the boomerang uses in the levels behind it, and well, I actually did try that. Problem is, spoiler, we need the frosty ring for an upcoming part, so we have to complete the second set of levels to get it, otherwise we get stuck with no way to finish the last chunk of the game. I was hoping that by entering and leaving the final level, we would trick the game into thinking that I must have already gotten rid of the ice blocking off the second set of levels, but no such luck. Even fighting all the way to the final boss won't get the game to advance the hub world forward. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's get into Cass's Crest. The final section is split into 3 different sub-levels. The first is in this forest area and is insanely easy, just a straight path with a few obstacles. There is apparently a skip for this level, but honestly, you can probably blast through the whole thing in like 2 minutes tops regardless, so I wouldn't worry. Next up, we end up inside Cass's lair. Not long in, we meet up with Shazza, who's managed to find us another talisman. Before she can hand it over though, boss Cass's bat minion Shadow comes along and steals the talisman as well as Shazza away. This leads to a boss fight where we have to press these buttons to send gusts of air to the vents underneath Shadow to damage her, and since buttons can only be activated with boomerangs, that means we're gonna have to use them here. We have to hit her 3 times in 3 different areas, meaning 3 more rangs are required. You'll also need to use the gusts of air to move to the next area after every hit, so to avoid excess boomerang uses, you'll want to be quick to catch the same gust of air you used to damage Shadow before it dies down. After dealing the final hit and getting our reward from Shazza, we can move on. There's a little chunk of the level left, leading to us having our final confrontation with Sly. Who? Oh, yeah, that one evil Tasmanian Tiger that was perving on Ty that one time. Huh. This final encounter probably would have been a lot more epic if I didn't skip a third of the game. Anyway, this isn't an actual fight, just a cutscene in which Ty absolutely smokes Sly, but being the good guy that he is, Ty saves his life in the end. Heading through the doors at the end, we see Boss Cass has built a massive robot, which he plans on using to finish what he started all those years ago. Before it can get away though, Ty jumps aboard to put an end to Boss Cass's scheme. And this fight is why we needed the Frosty Ring. The first section of this fight sees us needing to destroy these flamethrowers around the place, and for whatever reason, our bites aren't enough to do it. Instead, we first need to freeze them with the Frosty Ring to make them brittle enough for our bites to be effective against them. This is a pretty big investment, since there are 12 of these flamethrowers around the place, upping our boomerang uses by 12. That's not it though, not by a long shot, as now we need to descend into the bowels of the machine, and to do so, we need to break down one of these doors, taking 3 more rangs. Then we need to do some damage to the internals. There are 8 of these tubes down here, and each of these requires 2 hits to break, leading to another 16 rang chucks. Yikes. This area is also swarming with enemies, so my first thought was to clear them all out to avoid my throws missing and hitting some of them by mistake, but they just respawn endlessly, so that was kind of pointless. We're still not done yet though, as the robot is still moving. Luckily, Sly appears, having apparently had a change of heart, and decides to join our cause.
Sly! What are you doing?
What I should have done years ago. I'm giving him a hand, mate.
Again, probably would be a bit more impactful if I hadn't skipped so much of the story, but oh well. He chucks Ty his boomerang, which not only kicks a massive punch, but is also fully controllable, and we have to guide it through the internals of Cass's machine to deal the final blow. Theoretically, this is just one more rank use, but I'd be lying if I didn't say that this took me a ton of tries. I just couldn't get my head around controlling the boomerang, and we have to hold it for a super long time without ramming into anything. This segment just goes on and on and on, but eventually I did do it, landing the final hit to put a stop to Boss Cass's plans. With Boss Cass defeated and all the talismans returned to where they belong, balance is once again restored to all of Australia, even Perth. As an added bonus, now that all the talismans are back, the portal that took all the tigers away years ago reopens, allowing them all to return and letting Ty finally meet with his parents. Aw, how nice for him. So, can you beat Ty the Tasmanian Tiger without using boomerangs? No, not really. All said, it took 54 rang uses to get us through to the end, with most of them being as a result of the final stretch. I think there's probably a lot of room though to bring that number down. If you couldn't tell from the few glitches that I did use in this run, this isn't really the most polished game in the world, technically speaking. No shade, of course. Because of that, I'm sure that there are a ton of glitches to exploit out there that could drop that number down by a lot, but I think that's a job for somebody else. I got other runs to be getting on with. So until next time, thanks for watching. I feel like this run has taken me ages to make due to my life getting in the way a little, so I'm glad to be finally finished with it. If you enjoyed, please remember to like and consider subscribing for more content like this in the future. Until next time, I've been Katie Cat, and thank you for watching.